Hey Pagan family, Scarlett here. I hope you all are doing well. So today I'm going to be going over 4 tips for beginner pagans. And for anyone new here, welcome. I create weekly content about topics like tarot, paganism, and magic. And for my returning subscribers, welcome back guys. So let's jump right into the video. So my first tip is to study different paths to see what resonates with you. Because paganism, it's really this kind of huge umbrella term, and there are hundreds of different paths and traditions that you could follow. For example, you could be a Norse pagan, a Celtic pagan, a Wiccan, or any other of the various paths. Or maybe you might end up combining certain paths to kind of create your own personalized spiritual journey. And I wouldn't stress too much about making this decision right away. It's meant to be this long journey. And for me personally, I started out as a Wiccan and I started practicing Wicca when I was a young teen, and then over the years I've kind of started to slowly move away from Wicca and focus my path more on Norse pagan and Celtic pagan traditions. And I kind of view that studying and learning about these various paths is a lifetime pursuit. And reading different historical texts that put your spiritual practice into context is really important, but it's not really the whole story here. Because as modern pagans, we're kind of striving to take what we've studied from these historical texts and bring those traditions into the modern world. The goal is to use the knowledge you've gained to formulate traditions and rituals that you can actually practice here now in our modern time that still stay true to the core underlying beliefs and traditions of our pagan ancestors. So the second tip I have for you is to spend time in nature. So if you are looking to develop a connection with the old gods, there is no better place than the natural world to connect with them. And as I just mentioned, there is this huge variety of different pagan paths. However, they pretty much all share a reverence for nature. And throughout these paths, many traditions view certain natural spaces such as forests and streams and mountains as sacred spaces. So these are the types of places we can go to connect with our spiritual path. Now, not all traditional pagan cultures did worship the gods in nature. Some, like the Greeks and the Romans, actually constructed huge, magnificent temples in their cities as places to connect with the gods, while other pagan traditions, such as Norse pagans, tended to erect statues outside and kind of connected with their deities more in nature. So, of course, there is variation here. And unfortunately, today we don't really have many physical buildings or temples that we can use as spaces to connect with the gods. And while some of these spaces do exist currently, because they are historic sites, they are usually under the control of a museum or a heritage society. So it's not exactly like we can go in the middle of Stonehenge and just do a ritual whenever we'd like, or go inside the Pantheon in Rome to honor the gods. But luckily, we do have the natural world. So we can, of course, spend our time outdoors as much as possible and use that as an opportunity to connect with the old gods. Of course, spending time outdoors doesn't have to just be for religious reasons. I find that most pagans really strive to incorporate nature in their day-to-day life. So I try in my own life to go on walks and hikes as much as possible. And eventually, when I do move out of the city and have some green space of my own, I do plan on growing a garden and trying to live a bit more sustainably. The third tip I have is to record your experiences. So most people who follow the Wiccan path keep a journal known as a Book of Shadows or a grimoire. And I've been keeping these books for quite a while. I have many different copies of them because I started out as a teenager and now I'm in my 30s. And I do have a bad habit of constantly buying new, beautiful notebooks and kind of throwing out the old ones and wanting to start over. And I know that's a bad habit. But in general, I think it's a great thing to keep track of your rituals and experiences, even if you're not necessarily following the Wiccan path. Some of the things I like to personally include in my grimoire are recipes and crafts that are associated with certain pagan holidays and certain rituals and spell work that I might perform, and also a collection of information on the various plants and herbs that are local to my region. And along with my grimoire, I also keep a journal for recording my dreams and my meditations so that I can keep track of any symbols or messages that might be coming from the other side. And of course, what you choose to include in your notebook will be dependent on which pagan path you follow. And you don't need to worry too much about buying this beautiful, nice leather-bound journal. Plenty of people do just fine keeping their grimoires on spiral-bound notebooks, and some people actually like to keep an online grimoire. And I've actually tried that out too, using Google Docs and Google Folders, and it can definitely be a useful way to keep track of everything. So it's really up to you to see what system works with your life the best. So my last tip is to create an altar. And an altar can be a great place to connect with the gods on a daily basis. And you don't really need to buy super elaborate tools or anything to get started. You can pretty much just use what you have laying around. And luckily, since paganism is very connected to the natural world, you can also pick up natural items that you might find on a hike to help decorate your altar. And some people have an indoor altar, some people have an outdoor altar, some people have multiple altars. It's really up to you. For me personally, since I do live in the city, I don't have an outdoor altar right now, but I do have 2 small altars in my apartment. I have one in my bedroom where I keep my tarot decks, a few crystals, and a few different statues of various Norse gods. And then I do have a space in my living room. I actually use the mantle of my fireplace as an altar to celebrate the various pagan holidays. So I actually redecorate that altar for the different pagan celebrations. And I've done plenty of videos, I'll link some down below, where I show you how I like to decorate my altar for the various holidays. And once you've set up your altar, it really becomes a wonderful sacred space that you can use to leave offerings for the gods, or meditate, or perform any type of ritual that you might want to try. So I really hope you enjoyed this video today, and before I sign off, I did want to mention that I actually recently started a Patreon, and I have my first few patrons, so I am super excited, and I will leave the link down below if you do find this content valuable and would like to help support the creation of more and even better content. I do hope you will consider joining my Patreon community. And thanks again for watching today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.